So welcome to this lesson where we're going to take a look at our final project, which is creating a multi-page form on a 3D cube. And this is going to create a really cool 3D effect and create a more engaging experience for our users to fill out the form data and so forth. Now you can implement this now into your website and also provide fallback support, which we'll cover in the next lesson, which will allow you to support older browsers so at least they get that information and can fill it in. So this is very cool, very engaging, and a lot more interactive than just basically fading and sliding. Now, in this lesson, we're going to start out with a boilerplate, which means that all of our styling and so forth has been done already, because obviously styling is fairly simple and basic, and also we know how to create a 3D cube. And if you've forgotten, check out lesson 6 and 7. That's part 1 and part 2 of creating the CSS 3D cube. And then what I've done is I've taken the finished cube out of part 2 or lesson 7 and I've made it bigger. So I've taken the cube from 200 pixels by 200 pixels per face to 380 by 380 pixels per face. Also, the way I've translated it is different as well, because as you know, we have to translate it from that central point. So instead of it being 100 pixels now, it's 190 pixels, which is half of the actual size of the face. So we're keeping that point central so that it actually transitions and transforms correctly. So that's basically where we're starting out from. I've also done obviously the styling of the forms, and also we're going to have a calendar in there and so forth. I've done all of that styling for you because that can go on for hours and hours. So I'd rather just start out with a basic boilerplate. So what I'm going to do now is show you the final project folder. So you'll be able to see inside of here we have a few images and assets. So for example, we have this shadow PNG file right here, and also we have this dark and light background. Again, they're all for aesthetic reasons, as well as the profile picture and a few other images as well. So if we actually go ahead and take a look at this inside of the browser, you'll be able to see that we have this shadow, which is just making a really cool sort of 3D effect. It's not a dynamic shadow, it's just a background image, and you'll notice we have this dark background right here. And also we have a light version as well to when we actually go to a different face. We have the profile picture, which is going to be on the front face, again just for aesthetic reasons. The tick is going to be on the last face, which is the top face in this case. And that's going to say, yeah, thank you very much for filling in the form. Then we have the next and previous icons, obviously for iterating through the pages on the form. And then also we have the finish PNG again for the finish button when we complete the form, and then it's going to go to the thank you sort of face, if you like. So that's basically it. Now also you'll be able to notice here that we have Modernizer.js, and what we're going to do is take a look at this now. So Modernizer I downloaded and asked it to check to see if the browser had CSS 3D transforms and if it could actually do that. So I've just downloaded that, so I tick that little box right there and hit generate. I didn't tick anything else. This is just the basic standard stuff right here. So I've just left that on by default, and I've just copied all of that JavaScript and put it into that Modernizer.js file, and then I've linked it into the CSS 3D cube.html file. So that's the main file right there that contains all of our DOM elements and links to all of our JavaScript and CSS. You'll notice we have main CSS right here. As I said, all the styling's already been done, so that's containing all of our styling for the cube, the transforms, and everything else. But we will be adding to this ever so slightly. Then we have Oridomi.js, which you can go to oridomi.com, and of course we're going to be using this folding paper effect on the actual calendar, which is going to look pretty cool. And of course you can apply it to any pop-up window and so forth that you want to, or any inline element if you want to. Then also we have jQuery calendar. So this is from jQuery UI. Basically it's the date picker widget right here, so we can pick a date and we can iterate through. Now when I downloaded this, I didn't download it with any theme, and also I just downloaded this widget specifically. So where it says components toggle all, I've unticked that. Then I've scrolled down to the widget section and I've just ticked date picker, and it will include the core, and that's pretty much it. Also, we have the theme down here. I've set that to no theme so I don't get any CSS or images or any bulk that I don't want. So I'm just going to set that to no theme and then download it, and literally that is the file that you get. So you get the jQuery minified version of the UI, and you just want to copy that file. Also, I have jQuery.js, which you can download the latest version from jQuery.com. And we'll be using that throughout. And also, we'll be using Oradomi with jQuery this time. There's no point me doing it actually all in plain old JavaScript. I'm going to do it with jQuery so you can see how Oradomi interacts and plugs in to this library. So now that we've gone ahead and taken a look at the boilerplate that we have available to us right here, what I want to then do is actually take a look at this HTML file inside of Dreamweaver. So here you'll be able to see we have our file open right now, and also what you'll notice is that when we're in Finder, you'll see this is an XAMPP. Now if you haven't heard of this program before, there's other programs very similar to it for the Mac called MAMP, and if you're a web developer you'll know what that is, but if you don't, basically it's emulating the server environment, because we're actually going to be placing in a Vimeo video right here, which is this cool timescape video. Kudos to the guy who made that. Looks very, very cool. So we're just going to be placing that in for obviously aesthetic reasons. And so basically, as you can see, what we need to do is actually emulate that on a server-based environment so that the video actually shows up. Otherwise, the video won't show up. So we'll get onto that in just a second. So right here you'll be able to see we're linking to our main style sheet. This is very, very important. As you can see, we've got all of our styles in right here. With the body element, we have that shadow.png applied, just creating that really cool effect, and also the background color as well, and a few other bits and bobs. And you'll be able to see right here we have our cube. And also on our cube, you'll notice that I've added the WebKit transition, also the Moz and the non-prefix version of that CSS property. I'm saying translate all the CSS properties that are available in 1 second, and you can add easing onto that and so forth. So I've added that onto the cube because the cube is the thing that we're going to be rotating and wanting to actually animate. And again, take a look at lesson 8, which is using CSS animations and transitions, to recap on what we're doing right there. So it's very basic, and what I'm going to go ahead and do is go back into the source code. So you can actually reorder the divs. You don't have to keep them in exactly the same order because they're all basically positioned absolute, so they're positioned all on top of one another, and we've just moved them into position. But you know, I could put the front div right at the bottom and the bottom div right at the top right here in my DOM order, because it doesn't matter, we're moving them into the correct position. So effectively what I've done is I've put this in order to how I want the form to actually work. So first we have the front face that's automatically facing towards us, which is very important. I'm just going to keep things simple and make that the first face. Then we're going to go around to the right hand side, and then we're going to get a bit more content. Then we're going to go to the back. Then we're going to go to the left hand side, and then finally we're going to go to the top. So again, you'll be able to see what we're doing right here. It's very simple. We're just going around the faces of the cube, and then we're just going to the top face, which is then going to give you that thank you message. So how did I exactly style this up? Well, the front face was very easy. Obviously, I put in the elements that I wanted to style right here. So we have an input for our password, let's say, to log in or start the form process. Then also we have this div, and we have that profile picture placed in there, and we've just got some header 1 text right here. And all the styling, by the way, is done down here. So this styling, which is on the top half, is to do with the body and HTML and the cube and all the faces of the cube, and also the styling of the faces. So for example, we have the dark background and the light background, which is those cool textures that we had right there, dark and light. And that's basically what the top half is consisting of. Then we have the styling for the actual content that's placed on the sides or the faces of the cube. And then right down here you'll be able to see we have the styling for the jQuery calendar. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually go back, and we'll save that, and we'll actually take a look at this inside of the browser. So here you'll be able to see I have that profile picture. I've added a nice border radius on here so we get the nice circle effect, and of course I've wrapped that in a div element right here, div with the ID of pic, and that's just basically creating that nice border that we have. And then we have the header one, Envato, and then also we have the password or input field right here. And as soon as they click on that, what's going to happen is they're going to go over to the right hand side of the cube, and that's going to present some more information. So I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Let's go ahead and rotate the cube because now we want to actually style the right hand side. So what I'm going to do is go back into main CSS, go all the way up to the top where we have the cube. So then what I want to do is rotate this on the y-axis -90 degrees, and that way we'll be facing the right hand side of the cube. Then what I can go ahead and do is I'll just uncomment this out so we can have some DOM elements that are visible on this face, and then obviously you can go ahead and style it in the CSS, which I've already gone ahead and done. So here you'll be able to see we have a few input fields, and what I want to do is basically when I focus on this particular input field, I want the date pickers to open. I'm going to have 3 date pickers. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually take a look first of all at the structure right here. So we have a div with an ID of wrap. That is wrapping the input field that we have, which is date trigger. Then it's also wrapping this div with the ID of date and also this div with the ID of date over. And you're probably going, why do we have these 2 divs right here? Well, this first div, the div with the ID of date, is just going to be there for display purposes, for animation, and for the Oridomi paper folding effect. But however, the date over div is actually where we're going to be placing in our date picker UI elements. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is go down here where you can see that I've loaded in all of my scripts. Now Modernizer has no dependencies, so I can just load that in. Then we have jQuery first of all, then we have jQuery Calendar, which is the jQuery UI date picker that I downloaded earlier, and so that's loaded in below because it has the dependency on the jQuery library. Now Oridomi doesn't necessarily have to work with jQuery, but in this case we're going to work with jQuery and Oridomi. So I'm loading in Oridomi after jQuery. So the order in which you load stuff is very important. So the next thing I want to do is in between these 2 empty script tags, what I want to do is first of all wait until jQuery has loaded and also the DOM has loaded as well. And also this is a really good way to actually put in your scripts and execute commands because you're actually doing this without affecting the global namespace. So you're helping the performance of this as well. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is put the $ in, open the brackets and say function, open and close brackets, open and close parentheses, close the brackets and end with a semicolon. Now in between those 2 parentheses right there is where we want to execute all of our commands because now the DOM's loaded, jQuery is ready and we can start to execute commands safely. So once I've gone ahead and done that, what I want to do is point to this DOM element right here, which is date over. So I'm just going to point to it via its ID obviously, so we say date over, and then once we've done that I can say dot date picker. So once I do this, this is then going to apply the date picker widget into this div element right here. And then what I can do is pass in a few options, and I need to put that inside of an object, so we're going to put in those parentheses right there, meaning an object literal, and then inside of there we can define some options. So for example, we can choose how many date pickers are displayed at once. Now by default it's just 1 date picker, but I want 3 date pickers displayed. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is say number of months, and you'll notice of has a capital O and months has a capital M, and that's very important, and I'm going to set that to 3. So 3 date pickers will be displayed at once, and then also I can define the previous and next text for iterating through the months. So I'm just going to say prev text, and then I'm going to set it to that symbol and then the next text. I'm going to set that to be that symbol. So this is basically just for cosmetics. So once I've gone ahead and done that, I can save that, and voila, we will have a date picker. Nice and easy, and we can iterate through and take a look, and you'll notice this is the previous text and this is the next text right here in the button, and it just looks really nice and clean. You'll also notice that sometimes what we have down here is we have some extra days that are pushed along, because obviously this month starts quite late in the week. So we actually get an extra line, and this sort of looks really ugly and unprofessional. So the actual height of this is 247 pixels right here. So I've already got the measurements already laid out for me. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is go back and take a look at the CSS. I'm going to scroll all the way down, and right here where you'll see date and date over, I want to set the height first of all. So that's going to be 247 pixels. Now don't forget, we're going to be applying the origami effect to the date element. So it's always good to define the width and the height so origami knows how to chop this up correctly. So once I've gone ahead and done this, what I want to do is go ahead and fix this problem where we have these sort of empty spaces down here, because it doesn't look very nice. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is point to the date over element, and I'm going to add in a background image. So I'm going to say background. Now the background image is this grid image that I have. So basically it's aligned to the right and the bottom. And I'm just going to export that. So I'm going to say File, Image, Preview. Then I'm going to go PNG8, Index Transparency, so we get nice sharp edges. Export that, and we'll export it as grid.png. And I'm going to say URL, grid.png. And then I'm going to say repeat X, then I'm going to say left, bottom, and then what I want to do is set the background color to white right there, because don't forget we're overriding that CSS property. So once I've gone ahead and done that, let's take a look at this now inside of Safari, hit refresh, and there we go. So we're going to get that bottom row in there, or it's emulating that. Now you'll also notice this middle section is darker, and it doesn't follow all the way down to the bottom. Again, doesn't look right. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to take a look at this middle section down here, which is right here, UI date picker group middle, and I'm going to say URL grid.png, repeat X, and then I'm going to say left, bottom, and obviously we have the background color right there, and it's obviously alpha transparent, so it's going to look great. The only other thing is it's not actually stretching to the correct height. So what we want to do is set the minimum height. So I'm going to say min-height 247 pixels. Once that's done, go back, hit refresh, and there you go. So everything's looking really nice now, and everything is in line. So even if that row is not being used, at least we get that row displayed, so we have a little bit of consistency. Now I want to hide this now, because obviously initially we don't want to see this. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is where we have this date.hidden right here, I'm just going to put in a comma and then point to the date over element. So once I've gone ahead and done that, I'm going to hit refresh. And there we go. So now you'll be able to see what we have behind it, which is just for the animation. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm actually going to apply the origami effect to this element right here. Now you're probably going, well, we want this hidden initially, so why have you basically said, alright, point to the ID of date, but then also wait for the hidden class to be applied, which of course it isn't. And that's because origami needs to initially be applied to an object that is actually displayed on the page. You can't hide it initially and then apply origami because it won't work. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is go into the source code, and down here what I want to do is point to the date object, and then what I want to do is call the origami method. So I'm going to initialize origami onto this element, and you'll notice domi has a capital D right here. Very important, this is case sensitive. So when I first initialize it, what I want to do is pass in a few options that are available to us. So I'm going to open and close my parentheses right here, and then I'm going to apply these options. So we have H panels, so we're going to be animating vertically, so we're going to be working with the horizontal panels, and there's going to be 5 of them. And then also we've got touch enabled. I don't want them to drag this, I just want this to be an animation, so I'm just going to set that to false. The speed is 400 and the perspective is 500. Now once I've initialized it, I can call Oridomi again, so I'm going to say .oridomi again with a capital D, and then I can start to apply some methods such as accordion and so forth. So I'm just going to say accordion, and then I want to set the percentage of how much I want this to be folded up, so that's -100, and the anchor point is going to be set to the top. So once I've gone ahead and done that, I'm just going to end with a semicolon right there, and then let's go ahead and preview this. So there you'll be able to see we get that animation of this folding up, and it's fairly quick and sharp, so that's looking pretty good. So the next thing I want to do is actually hide this. So once I've gone ahead and initialized Oridomi on to this element right here, and we've applied this method and so forth, I want to say, okay, when the callback's done, when it's just applied this method to it, I want to hide the element. So what I'm going to do is put in another parameter, and this is going to have to be inside of an object. And so then what I can do is say callback, and then I can point to the date object again. Then I can add the class hidden. So once I've gone ahead and done that, let's go ahead and save it and preview it inside of Safari. And there you go. So it's happening pretty much at the blink of an eye. So we don't really have to worry about it too much. So once that's gone ahead and happened, what I want to do is then when we focus on this input field, I want it to actually start to animate out. So obviously I want it to unfold, and then I want to fade in over the top of that the date over element. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to target the input. So the input has the ID of date trigger .on. So we're listening out for an event, and the event is going to be when they focus on this input field. What we want to do is then run a function, and then what we want to do is point to the date element right here. And as you know, we've added the class hidden, so this is now set to display as none. So what we want to do is first of all fade it in. So I'm going to point to the element date.fade in 200 milliseconds. And I'm also making this fade in less than the actual time of the Oridomi animation, and that's because we're going to get a better effect. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is save that now, go back out and hit refresh. And what will happen is that when we focus on this input field, you'll notice that this fades in. And it's fading in fairly quickly, but still we're getting a nice effect. However, what we need to do is now unfold it. So what I'm going to do is say .oridomi, and then I can use the reset method. So effectively that's like setting the accordion value right here to 0, so then it's not folded up at all. So once I've gone ahead and done that, let's go back, hit refresh, and we'll get a nice cool animation right here. That is really, really cool. And to get a better effect, you might want to increase this, let's say 600 milliseconds right there, and hit refresh. Click on this input, and there we go, we get a little bit more of that accordion effect that's visible. So that looks really cool. So the next thing that I want to do is when this animation is completed, which takes 600 milliseconds, what I want to do is then fade over the top of that the date over element. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is use the set timeout method, and in there it takes 2 parameters. First of all, we have the code, which is just going to be a function that's going to run, and then the second parameter, when I put in a comma right here, is the delay. So the delay is how long will this take until the function is going to be executed. So I'm just going to say 600 milliseconds. I'm going to close the brackets and end with a semicolon. In between those 2 opening closing parentheses right there, we want to basically point to the date over element and then fade it in. And again, it's going to be 200 milliseconds. So once I've gone ahead and done that, let's go back, hit refresh. If we click on this input, and there we go. So once that animation is completed, the date over calendar fades in on top. Perfect, that's exactly the effect that we're looking for. So the next thing to do is to actually say that when we click off this and we're not targeting this input and we're not targeting any of these links right here or anything inside this date over element, so for example I click right here, what you're expecting is the calendar to fade away. We haven't got any close button right here. So what I need to do is first of all make sure that there is a class on every element that we don't want when the user clicks on it to actually trigger this to fade away, but every other element that we click on we want to basically close this out. So if you're not sure what I'm on about right now, don't worry, I will explain this in just a second. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is point to the date over element, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find all the child elements. So I'm going to say .find, and I'm going to use the wildcard selector, which is the asterisk, and that's basically saying find all child elements. Doesn't matter which one it is, just find them all. And then what I want to do is add the class not me. Alright, so once I've gone ahead and done that, what we can do is then open this up, hit refresh, and what will happen is that when we click on this, let's go ahead and inspect all these child elements right here. And as you can see, they all have the class not me, not me, not me, and so forth and so on, which is perfect. That's exactly what I want. Now the only problem is that when we click on one of these next or previous buttons right here and go ahead and inspect the element again, you'll notice that it doesn't have the class not me, which is going to be a problem. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is say that whenever we click on the previous or next button, I want there to again find all the child elements and apply that class. Very, very important that we do this. So as you can see with the next button right here, what we have is the class UI corner all, and that class is again on this button right here. So now what we have to do is put in that class name, then again we're going to say .on, and we're going to listen out for the mouse down event. Now the reason why we're going with the mouse down event and not the click event is because the click event can detonate prematurely, as I like to call it. So it can actually fire the function before all of the new elements are placed inside of the element. So we don't want that. Use mouse down, it makes sure that it executes the function after the target has been clicked, and obviously then we've got the new child elements, and then it's going to run the function to add the class, and that way it makes it a lot safer and a lot easier to use. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is say function, and then what we're going to do is execute the exact same command that we have right here. Alright, so once we've gone ahead and done that, let's take a look at this now. So I'm just going to hit refresh. And right here you'll be able to see, yes, we still have the class not me, and then when we click on this right now and we go ahead and take a look at these elements right here, so I say inspect, you'll be able to see these have not me, not me, not me, and that's going to be the same throughout them all. So if I hit inspect on this one, you'll be able to see again it's still got that class on all of the child elements, which is perfect. Alright, so that's the end of this lesson, and in the next lesson we'll continue on and we'll get this guy to fade away and we'll sort of clarify what we've done here in this lesson. So thanks for watching, and hope you can join me in the next one.